because our
Hey.
first news topic is book related. Now, Josh, did you actually ever read any of the Lord of the Rings?
Oh yeah, I've read all three all the
Okay,
way through,
I've
and I
always
read The
tried
Hobbit.
to read Fellowship, and I always get like halfway through, and it's I don't know. I just have never been through it. But thankfully, you don't need to read any of the books for the new Amazon Lord of the Rings series, now called The Rings of Power. Which, not gonna lie, that's a pretty good title. Am I still nervous about the show? Oh, absolutely. Um, they released this like teaser of like this is what the title looks like, which I was really surprised to find out that that was practically filmed. It's not CG or anything. Like they actually, it's all like carved woodworking, like woodworking and everything else. I'm like, that's really cool. And the show will supposedly be like the rise of Sauron. I'm going, wasn't that a video game at one point, like a prequel game? But maybe I'm just imagining that because there used to be a whole
Yeah,
slew
no,
of Lord of the
that's not
Rings
a thing.
games.
That's not a thing. That's not a thing.
The picture looks really, really cool. And the teaser was, for the most part, cool. But I'm not going to lie. I'm sure you're in the same camp here, Josh. When anybody ever talks about, like, the rings of power were forged, I'm so used to it being Kate Blanchett's voice that when it's not, I'm just like, this just feels like imitation here. You're not the
Yeah,
voice you're supposed to be. I know it's set in the past, but I mean, shouldn't you be able to have Lady Galadriel? Because they live like forever. It was a cool teaser.
yeah,
I like the name a lot. I'm still kind of. I'll be cautiously optimistic about this, but I do still have some concerns about like some of the statements that they've said in the past about like what the show will be like, and I'm worried that this is just going to be their attempt at Game of Thrones with the Lord of the Rings skin, because they're like we wanted to be more adult in our programming. Going, you do realize Lord of the Rings was originally meant for children and teens. Like, I don't really want a sex scene in Lord of the Rings, because that's not really what Tolkien originally envisioned. And I don't know. Like, there's this thing of, like, yes, the original Lord of the Rings was PG 13, but it was originally more a children's story. So I don't need it to be adultified. And Amazon tends to skew adult, which is fine. The Boys is great. Invincible is great. I don't need R-rated Lord of the Rings. Am I overthinking this, Josh?
no, not at all. I so the I just I agree. The teaser was cool, and finding out it was all practically shot is like I have feelings about that. It's cool, uh, but at the same time, I rolled my eyes a little bit because I was like, "Oh, okay." It's like when somebody shoots on film these days. It's like, "Ah, yeah, and it's gonna be shot on 9 millimeter film." Blah, blah, blah. I was like, "Cool."
9 millimeter? You mean
Yeah,
like
I don't
35 or
know.
70?
Yeah, yeah. You know what I mean. But still, I was like, so why? What's the justification? Like, so the only thing I can think of is that they're trying to be more practical with this and not rely so heavily on the CGI, which is what one of my major issues with the Hobbit movies was.
Especially Hobbit.
Yeah, like because I was kind of already a little bit checked out, but then Legolas started Mario hopping up falling rocks, and I was like, I'm good. I don't need to watch this anymore. Fine. Um, as far as Rings of Power goes, it's fine. Sure, it's a cool title, I guess. Uh, the Rise of Sauron could be potentially pretty interesting.
That would be an even better
Um,
name, though.
yeah, Rise of Sauron or something. I just or impending doom. But I thought that was funny. I guess I'm the only one over here. Um, but I just like it's fine, and I agree. I think
Oh,
you and I.
impending doom.
There you go. That was funny, man.
My
Oh,
brain.
um, yeah. No, it's just weird to hear that speech come from somebody else's mouth. And I think we're gonna have to get used to that with this series. To my knowledge, no actors are returning.
Also,
Um,
no
and,
actors that I know are in this show.
of course not. So we'll see. I just the way and like tying the them wanting to do a more Game of Thronesy thing, and then putting in the view of that speech of like these rings went here, these rings, I was like instantly could see the Game of Thrones connection of being like, oh, they think power is like political power. Oh no, that's all right. That's fine. Again, we'll have to wait to find out how this ends up going. But like, I'm while the teaser was cool, not convinced. Show me an actual trailer, then we'll talk.
Yeah, and I don't know. The premise has always been interesting enough, but not like must watch, which is weird considering to me the original Lord of the Rings trilogy is one of the greatest trilogies of all time and like a landmark in filmmaking and a yearly tradition for me. I have to watch it because it's just so good. But maybe I think part of it is also the Lord of the Rings brand has been diluted thanks to the Hobbit movies, and I'm just going, I don't feel the urgency that I need to see it. Again, the first trailer could be amazing, blow us out of the water, but I think there was more interesting stories to tell here, because tell me you wouldn't be super excited if instead of this show, we were getting a Shadow of Mordor show of like
Yeah.
a direct, like in between Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Actually, no, that takes place right before Hobbit, I believe. But like almost like Lord of the Rings meets Witcher. You find one lone outcast soldier who you see the story through his eyes, and you get more of the world, so to speak. Because I really enjoy both Mordor games. I think is what Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, I believe is
Yeah.
the two names.
Yeah.
I really enjoy
I agree.
those.
There's just better stories I think to be out there, and more like interesting like. Could you imagine if they did a show about the dwarves and about them mining deep into this mountain, and then it turns out that they're in Moria, and then you like halfway through figure out it's Moria and go, oh no. So then you, the viewer, are like, they're gonna unearth a Balrog at some point, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for it. I just there's really interesting stories to be told here. You don't even have to touch the Silmarillion. I don't think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's still like this. So what's really funny is you couldn't read the books for Lord of the Rings and Hobbit. I did. I could not get through the Silmarillion. It is so boring and so stupid.
If I remember
But
right, that was like partially written by Tolkien, right? And then like finished by
it's
one of his
not all
kids. So maybe it's his writing issue.
that's all I can think. I don't care because it's not necessarily that big of a deal. But again, there's just some. I feel like there's more interesting stories. It's this almost has, and I'll wrap this up like this. Rings of Power feels like Lord of the Rings is going back to the same well the whole series has been about, kind of like Star Wars going back to Palpatine. And I'm not 100% on board with that.
Somehow Sauron has returned.
Yeah, basically.